That's great. Thanks so very much for being here this morning. I know it was short notice and very appreciative, but it was a short notice that last night Ways and Means passed out a bill that would increase the cost of living to Vermonters by $48 million. $48 million. That's on top of $650 million of increases of fees and taxes and surcharges and property taxes for the last 5 years. And so to that we add almost $50 million, and it's an outrage. It's wrong. I've been on the road nonstop, meeting Vermonters, all parts of the state. 14,000 miles logged. I've met personally more than 3,000 people, and not one of them said, you know what I need this year? Greater cost to live here, or another $48 million of higher fees or taxes. And the truth is that even their property taxes are going up as well. It's wrong. I'm here to say it's wrong. I think everyone who's running for governor should stand up and say this is just completely wrong-headed. The state really wants a different direction. And so I think the legislature should send this budget bill back to the governor, should not vote for it, send it back to the governor and let him do his job, which is submitting a budget that's rational, makes sense, and is living within our means. So I feel strongly about it. It's the heart of the kind of campaign we're running is to say this is the wrong direction. These are self-inflicted wounds, and it should stop today. So thanks so much for coming. I'm happy to answer the questions you may have.
What would you come?
I think they should send the bill. I'm not the governor. What I'm saying is send this bill back to the governor and let him submit a rational budget that does not include an increase above what the economy is growing at. I mean, it's just crazy. I've been saying it for a while. You can't grow spending by 5 or 5.5%, or this year 4.3, heading for 5%, when the economy is growing at 2%. It's just wrong, and here we are again.
So, are you suggesting we shouldn't, if we don't raise revenue, is there something that would need to be cut to rephrase Terry's question a little bit?
Let me say it again. So we're not talking about having a reduction in spending. We're having, I suggest, a reduction in the rate of growth of spending. It's a remarkably different thing. It's an increase. We're not trying to hurt people. We're not trying to take away value to them. But really, what we're doing is hurting everyone by imagining that we can continue on this path.
So would a $20 million increase in taxes have been acceptable in your mind? Where's the cutoff point of how much we should be growing in looking for new tax revenue, and the point where it becomes egregious?
Yeah, I think it's egregious. This is an obsessive time of the year because it's mainly focused on where can we find revenues to feed the machine. It's wrong. There aren't people out there who actually think this is a good idea. Most people have a broad expectation that we're living beyond our means, but they are paying for it, and we're doing it again. So the right answer is, I am not the governor, and what I'm saying is that the governor should have done his homework and submitted a budget that is within the realm of what we can live with, which is to say, our economy is growing at 2%. Maybe it's 2.5%, but it is not 4.5%, and it is definitely not 5%. And so, within that construct, we should start now and saying, this is wrong, start over again.
You are running to become the governor.
I am.
If you were so lucky as to have that privilege, where would you look in this instance to cut back?
I'd answer it in a different way. First, this budget is from this governor with this legislature. The legislature needs a budget that he produces that's rational one to build programs on. If I were governor, I'd have a completely different approach. So let's not just start with that. I think we should have an administration that's competent. I've said out loud, I don't think this one is. I think it should provide leadership to the legislature. Don't have the resources to dive into every single program. But I think as a course of normal management process, the governor is supposed to direct a process by which we are in fact diving in. So every program is supposed to have a goal, steps to reach the goal. What does it mean if we succeed? What are the consequences of failure? How long will it take to get there? And what's the cost? And you start a process of measuring not just how we spend our money, but how well we spend our money, and starting to measure benefits. So you can't start from day one. But I can tell you, even though we talk RBA, results, until the governor, the chief executive, the person we elect to, if you will, lead our state, thinks this is really important. It's not going to happen, but I think it is important, and it will happen. So look at it differently. Out of context, it's a bad question. It's not easy to answer it because this is the governor's budget. He should start over again. If it were me, I'd have a process by which we'd provide complete depth of information to the legislature so they can do their work.
Are there certain things that are off limits if you're governor? I mean, in some of your ads you talk about support for drug addiction and treatment, things like that. Looks like there might be some needed money environmentally to help with the poison wells around Bennington. I mean, sort of what is off limits as governor for you?
It's a good question. Thank you. I would look at it this way. So we've spent $640 or $650 million in the last 5 years, higher taxes, fees, surcharges, property taxes, with another 48 that may come this year. And I think you could safely say we've spent it badly. I'm not sure that we are better for that level of spending, and if we are, it needs to be demonstrated to those who would pay for it. But in fact, we have important themes in front of us. We have a lake that is now under EPA mandate to clean up. It's costly, it's largely unfunded. We have an opiate addiction problem, a heroin addiction problem that the governor identified for us in a broad way and dedicated a lot of time to it, but the programs are largely unfunded. Our pension plans, which are essential to those who work for us, largely not completely funded. These are programs that are essential. Over the next 5 years, we need to think about real investment. And I might add, the issues in Bennington, the Bennington area, are really disturbing. However you get there, watch it on the news, or quickly we think of Flint, Michigan. We need to do our best to remediate that as quickly as possible. Money is not the object there.
Have you taken a second look at maybe tax revenue that could come from marijuana legalization or other sorts of taxes, creative taxes from things that aren't taxed highly right now, in terms of meeting this goal of no budget that goes above 2%?
Well, the first part of your question is, have I examined other more creative ways to tax people? How much do you have? Give it to me. Is that a creative way to do it? No. And the truth is, we shouldn't pass a marijuana bill imagining that there'll be a kind of a cascade of money coming in. Our own analysis says it's going to cost the state net money, mostly on the front end of it, to encourage more people to use the stuff. That's a bad way of looking at it, but I'm very much against the commercialization of it, and I think it's a bad idea today anyway. So I think that's a bad way of looking at things. If it's the right program, well, let's do it and figure out what it costs to solve the problem that we're trying to do. I think I'm really saying something else. So we're talking about how a government is managed and how it's led and what we're supposed to provide from the executive branch to those in the legislature. And it's as simple as that.
The only thing that voters know right now about how you would manage money is from your campaign finance report the other day. And you spent the most of anybody. So right now we know, what we know of Mr. Lisman is he's the biggest spender running for governor.
Well, so the question was about my campaign. First, the campaign is going really well. 14,000 miles, 3,000 people I've met with and listened to, large numbers of group meetings all over the state, every county, multiple times. In some cases, double figures. So I'm busy and active. I don't have a profile when I started this. You might have known me, but the world didn't. And so we built infrastructure, and we've built an effort to get me known. All that cost me money. I didn't have a fundraising effort before I started, but trust me, I think we'll be raising lots of money. The right way to look at this is see how the campaign ends and what happens between now and then. And what you'll learn about me is, and I am more than what you see in a report like that.
A big portion of the new money is designed to go to our underfunded Medicaid system. The governor has proposed two different ways of filling that hole. The legislature has its own way. would you roll back the expansion if you were in the governor's office, or do you think it is worthwhile to put tens of millions of dollars towards making this program whole?
I'll ask you a question in return. If you were going to expand the Medicaid rolls and you knew it was expensive and you knew the equation was seriously complicated, would you have done it without having a plan to pay for it? I mean, who would do that?
Well, that's an argument a lot of Republican governors did make at the time, but given that we're in this position now, how would you move forward?
I've said before, and I'll say it again, we're in an information-free zone here. And so it would be good to find out who's in the pool, if they're better off for being in the pool, whether they're eligible to be in that pool, and whether they utilize the benefits that Medicaid offers, and on what basis. Is it the ones who are in Medicaid or getting benefit from Medicaid-like programs? So I'm saying something else. Really good management and a good way to lead us down a process to understand better what's in it. Let's not summarily say, because it's expensive, we should therefore take it away from people. Let's do the work. There are other governors who have been in this position and have had success at finding ways to pay for it. Oregon has done an audit, and I think the results were startling to them. North Carolina has done a series of audits, and they took a deficit of some size and turned it into a surplus. They looked at their administrative costs and said, whoa, that's so much higher than any other state. We need to re-examine how we do it and how we administer it. So I'd say, let's do the smart thing. Let's go find out what's going on within it. And then, if I were governor, I'd come back to you and say, here's what I know. Here's what I think I'd like to do, but here's what we have to do in the meantime. I'm not saying that's going to be the perfect answer, but simply talking about a large pool of people who are in there for a reason, I think you're supposed to find out what's going on. And I don't think we know. I think legislature doing its job. I think the governor should have provided real insight by now. I mean, for gosh sakes, he knew this was a problem when he started this. It was a problem last year. It's a problem this year. It's going to be a bigger problem next year. Let's go find out.
Do you believe that tax money used for incentives, the enterprise fund, for example, these sorts of programs, while they cost money, they can stimulate the economy and, down the road, sort of relieve a financial burden on Vermonters? Or do you think that tax money just shouldn't be used for those sorts of programs?
So his question was the enterprise fund itself?
The enterprise fund, other sorts of tax incentives to bring businesses into the state.
I think I get it. So I think a big part of my campaign is focusing on the economy, not just Chittenden County, where we traditionally think the economy is, but all those other counties where the economy is, but it's thinner, more fragile. What I've said is that it's taken a long time to get here. And so there's no single answer, not one answer that's going to get us something that we just hope to get. There's not a silver bullet. It's not two programs. It's doing a lot of things simultaneously. Having a competent government that offers real predictability, an administration that manages in an effective way offering that predictability is really important. Having a notion that we are going to have a budget growth in line with the approximate rate of growth of the economy begins to offer that predictability. But I've also said that if I were to pay you $50 a week to be my friend, you might be my friend until I ran out of money, in which case that's not a relationship, that's a commodity. In economic development, I think the last thing we do is money, but the first 5 or 10 things is build a relationship, understand an employer's needs, understand their aspirational goals and how it might intersect with ours. And instead of leaving suddenly, even though it's taken years to decide that, they'll work with us or we with them to solve problems. And I think the goal of that is to increase not just that employer count or employee count, but to work with them in investing in our state. So the right goal is to view, so if that's our goal, then money might be a part of it, but in my opinion, it's the last thing we do.
What percentage of increase are you saying some should come back?
I think the budget should grow at approximately the rate of the economy. I don't think it gets deeper than that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we got to go.
Got a boogie. Okay. Kyle, thanks so much for being